And Casada, the Tony, Tombani said, Motobaina, and Jigge, Dasin, Korea Zawa Dasin, the Bantu Mare, the Bamba by the Numo Bantu Mare, the Mapa, the Numo Bamodona, and the Korea Dunga to Mares. Just that Korea Dunga church, Dingy de Watoya, Tarpata Tamjiki Bokotobala, doesn't marry by the Bango Gores. That doesn't marry by the Baya, Dinian body caressne, Tombai to Pulores, just not Tombai to Pulodian Anzuke, that you come go Gores, the Gorshuge. The name Denny Tombai to Pulodi, Toyaki, said, Donna, and a kind of Sungure loved it, Anzuke Casa. Then Denji and George got himself some that Denji is some da. Denji is some dane, then dying to them as a good Kori check and nation now call it debig that lamb down and the Ricade even a chasa, shanch, dinner drubaji, don't do. And the Kala, Matuba Rangon when you do Tombadi and the Tombai to grace. Then is that the Denji some daja Tombai to or yes. Makasan, that can eat in Digo on the Shiro.
Good morning. Yesterday, we continued to look at the need to cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness. To cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness is absolutely crucial because it is the ignorance of self-grasping that is the root cause of our remaining bound in the suffering realms of samsara. It is because we are overwhelmed by the afflictions which all arise from the ignorance of self-grasping. And from lifetime to lifetime, we've remained bound in these suffering realms. And without developing the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is the direct antidote to the ignorance of self-grasping, we cannot eradicate it. And therefore, we will remain, life after life, bound in the suffering realms of samsara, experiencing and sufferings and difficulties, one upon the other. We also looked yesterday at the measure of having achieved the wisdom realizing emptiness, and that is through first reflecting that all phenomena are dependent arisings, including the paths that we cultivate in order to attain liberation. All phenomena are dependent arisings, and therefore they are empty of inherent existence. So when these two realizations come together, we can say, or when the one induces the other directly, that is the measure of having cultivated the correct view. So yesterday we looked at this in terms of the need to develop the wisdom realizing emptiness, how to do so, and the measure of having done so.
Some time to show them the ranching to be Kala, Kalama, the Rangun to be Tomba, the Red was a Tongsang says some daji, the new Tomba in some time, Lamsa di Chelia, and show them Jackans, essentially, doing your body, Sempiki, the dude, didn't take it topic, some time, Lamsan Chen to Grace. It's not that as a young chat them as a nag, Nang, Tong, some time, or that is so. Yudan Yen Shenshil doing the Jubari, Sempe Dendig, Namja, sometime Lamsa, Karsasun, Kalayama to Rangun, the Juba said, Yomari, Sempe, Tomba to Betawa, the Gentures. Denigi is that danger to be Lord Rang, Tomba to be Luni, but Chigro, Pension Chigi, Chigro, Roche, Chigti Jen, the Lamsa, Tomba to be Lodi Gender, Lamsa, Danger to be Lodi Pasu Jen to Yada. Danger to be Lodi, Gay on the Kabla, Lamsa, Chetam Jiranji to Tomba to Lodi Jen to Denigi Pension Chigro, Chitu Cheva, in the Lodi Gay on the Gay to whoever, Nubatinish lady, then a sign of Jumdandi, some big and the Kovale train, the Tarpa Tamji Kimetoba, Tomba in Ding, Dog recipe, Tomba in Dundadid, you also Zoba, Toba, yes, or that, David Jeva Zoba incident, Hasan, as long as David Jeva Zoba said it in the Shuruana.
The measure then, just to repeat, the measure of having completed one's attainment of the correct view is that when on one hand, one meditates on a particular phenomenon, on any phenomenon, and comes to realize that it is empty of inherent existence. It doesn't exist by way of its own nature at all. And that realization immediately induces the realization that, and therefore it is a dependent arising. In other words, the wisdom realizing the emptiness of inherent existence induces the wisdom realizing dependent arising. And conversely, when one reflects that everything that appears to consciousness is a dependent arising, dependent on causes or an imputation by mind or parts or mutually dependent, everything that appears to consciousness is a dependent arising, and therefore it is empty of inherent existence. So here too, the preceding realization immediately induces the latter realization. They are sequential like this. Here, the only difference is the prior realization was dependent arising, and that induces the realization of the wisdom realizing emptiness. And in the first sentence, it was rather first one realizes emptiness, and that then induces the realization of dependence arising. One realizes in both ways. And here, the initial realization assists or immediately induces the second realization. And when that occurs, one's cultivation of the view is complete. We'll continue now in the text with the 13th verse, and this presents the middle way's approach, or the Madhyamaka's approach, to the two extremes. Appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. Also, emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. And when you understand the manner in which causes and effects arise from within emptiness, you will no longer be robbed by the views of grasping at extremes.
ni di para de lyo ba de ki la go ma to tani me na ni cha ma ki ma cha ya ma ra ni ma do me na koroni ni ma de ne di ki ma la ya ma ra ji sa zu di ki ma re la de la chi yo ba de la che ba di ki di lyo ba za ho ki ma sa la go ki la go di u la go ji sa di na xin a zo u me lam la bya du ka re lam ne tani da se wi ke lam de la u me lam la go re se tani da se wi lam se 타니다 자유람 타니다 세유람 세 자와라 타니다 자유람 데라 우멜람나 고레세.
To say that something is of the middle way, it implies clearly that there are things to either side of it. If you're going down the middle, there's something on either side. Without there being something on either side, one cannot be in the middle. In our context of the middle way view, the middle way view is between two extremes, one on either side. Hence, it traverses the middle way between two extremes. To express that differently, the middle way eradicates both extremes.
그래서 kubje 파쇼를 지단 수제 니여네 다 먼저 미리 파쇼 kubje 간을 되어야나 그 kubje 니기 기말을 되어 말아 기만이를 되어 말아 그 기마 되어 파쇼 될때 다 파쇼 수제 kubje 간을 되어야네 미리 는 기말을 되어 말아 제산 kubje 지간을 타가 야네 파쇼 탈을 되어야 야네 수제 탈을 되어야 다 미치 디니 kubje 파쇼를 맞아 수제는 기마데 야랑 되어야네 미디 kubjen이 기대 되셔야 거로 마도 파셔들 되면 수셔를 되면 수로 지금 기대 되 봐서 디나신 아주게 탄이셔르제 타직보다 내바이나 기마차고 말 타직보다 내 탄이들 아주 예배 타다 메타세 체베 가서 딱타다 체타스죠 딱배 타다 체배 타 지산 딱타래 되어 있나 기만 되고 말 딱배 굽게 하절 되어 집어로 와 지산 체다들 내봐 있나 한 기만 되고 말 굽게 지 되어 집어 지산 단 우유랍도 딱타대랑 당 마되어지 체다래 미네바 딱타래 마네바 디기마들 봐 되긴 삼당한들다 우멜람 우마시고로람 우멜람 시고로와
We think of 3 chairs, one in front, one behind. If there is one in front and there's one behind, then there will be one in the middle. And whoever's sitting in the one in the middle will not be sitting on the chair in the front or the chair behind. That's quite clear. And it works the same here with asserting that a view is of the middle way. It is between 2 other views. And those 2 other views can be expressed differently, either the extreme of existence and the extreme of nihilism, the extreme of existence and the extreme of non-existence, or the extreme of existence can be expressed as the extreme of rarefication or the extreme of permanence. So the extreme of existence and the extreme of rarefication are synonymous, or the extreme of non-existence and the extreme of nihilism. So they are synonymous. The middle way is in the middle between the extremes of existence and non-existence, or, to express it differently, the middle way is between the extremes of nihilism and the extreme of reification.
Rangshin Jubati, Kanglaya ma Chue condition, Kanglaya Mato, Rangun when you droop the Bachi Yoban, Yodu Yomare, Denichi Yoban, Denichi la Tatala, Tapetala, Tapetala. Chepe Talabna, Ka, Dinner Rang when you Zawaki Mebatil, Mebatil, Mebatil. The Gune Yomare said the Chepe Tasigora. Jazan Tiny the Dire, Taktana, Cheda said, Takta said, Kanglaya Mato, Rangun when you droop the Yobadi, Taktachi. 다 얘네 자오기네 매봐서야 돼 체다세 체다 타니디 디시고래.
What is the meaning of the extreme of reification or the extreme of permanence? It means that something exists by way of its own nature or essence. So therefore, it's to say something is rarefied or exists is the extreme of rarefication means that it is established by way of its own essence or nature. In other words, it's truly existent. On the other hand, then, the extreme of nihilism means that something is non-existent. It is completely non-existent. Again, the extreme of rarefication or the extreme of permanence means that something exists by way of its own nature. It's established by way of its own nature or essence. And on the other hand, the extreme of nihilism means that something does not exist at all. It's completely non-existent.
강라에 마도바 랑원은 주바디 딱하르와 딱베타르와 지상아주 딩아주 렌고레 나와다지 아주게 강라에 마도 랑원이 주바지 레샤 선비기 소수기 데니게 베네 짐바 중요도 짐바 군다사야지 최고다 베네 데니게 레샤 선비 김제 삼다지 소수기 야나 김제 삼다 야네 지게 소수기 좀다지게 제수 장지 Lama chigi Jesu changa che rwada, dine kanglai mato rangwani dhubati yore, sampe samlo shiyo rwada. Sampai nada, penye kubje di deva jigbar da takta nesi di, ko kanglai mato rangwani dhubati yore, sampe rangwani dhubati yore, sampe samlo de samdangyo di jimbo kunta leba na, dine ko di kansa de takta le neba re esi, khaso kubje kala deva, payo kubje de deva de jigbar takta le neba re esi. 어디가 강라마 랑문이 두고 요래 세디 콜 켈린지 요로와 ngozu kelen ji garsan kelen ji yang koron yumchen chi sam dang kelen go yang na koron ge dumthi gi lama da de ni ge jesu zhang ji ne di yo re se kelen be ngozu kelen gi kelen kun da se lan ye ma kun da yo de ni ji kun da yo ba yin na da de gang sa di tak ta le ne ba re tak be ta le ne ba re so di phecho di rang mun du ba kelen go re so da kwa
someone who is not seated on the middle chair, but at one of the extremes, if they hold the view that is from the perspective of someone of the middle way, if they hold the view of the extreme of existence, that the extreme of reification, they intentionally believe that phenomena exist in the way that they appear. The extreme of existence, I already mentioned previously, is that there's the belief that phenomena are established by way of their own essence or nature. So this is how phenomena spontaneously appear to us, how phenomena naturally do appear to us. But for this to be, the view to be one of the extreme of existence, the person needs to have intentionally, consciously accepted that phenomena exist by way of their own nature. So there will be someone who holds a particular philosophical tenet that believes that phenomena have their own defining characteristic or essence or nature, and this is what establishes them as existing. And therefore, their grasping at phenomena as existing in the way they appear is acquired. Acquired meaning it's acquired independence on a view.
Chebe thadi rangu ne maduba na ko meba cha ru ku zao ne meba cha ya de meba di cheda cha go ba da chanda cheda la ne lab du ha dia gang la rangu ne maduba na che cha san zao ne yo ma re san be sam lo ta ba na che tham je ga ya min du san be sam ta ba na di gang sa di da cheda le ne ba re so de da ko gang sa di 최 간지나 자오기는 요 말에 가 최가 요 말에 삼바이나 다 가사디 채달을 내 말에스 아군다 예바 군다 채로 요 말에서 켈린지로 가사 다 랭게 말 가사 코롱게 켈린의 최 탐지다 가야 요 말에서 켈린 바이나 데네 삼다베네 가사디다 딱도 채달을 내 말에스
The second extreme. So the middle way, the second extreme from the view, from the perspective of the middle way proponent, is the extreme of non-existence or the extreme of nihilism. So this is a person then that again intentionally believes that phenomena do not exist at all, that phenomena are completely non-existent. And both of these extremes are acquired views. In other words, they have been intentionally adopted in dependence on tenets, as opposed to innate views, a natural way, an uncontrived way of thinking. So both of these, to hold either extreme view, and again that these are extreme from the view of the middle way, to hold either of them is something that has come about intentionally. They are acquired views.
나 우말 네바 라디 우말 네바레 라용도 지사다 최탐제 랑응원이 주바세디야 요마레스 랑응원이 주바이레스 케멜레 바체 다 따타디단 자와르와 랑응원이 주바세 자오디 요마레스디 지도 따타단 자와 랑응원이 주바 요마레스 킬링거와 나데네 최탐제 매바야 마레스 현실의 뛰네见的 규다게 현라 뛰네 요레스 킬링도 체타단 자와 지사 디니기 다 강라마도 랑원이 주바야 요 말에 랑은 요 말때 자오기네 매바 말에 아니 간스 요레스 현실을 뛰는 요레스데 삼다이도 데네 킬링이다 우마 기마들 내게 왔다 가서 거기 가서 랑원이 주바 킬링거 말와 랑원이 주바데 요 말에 세데 킬링 받자 따따를 미네 말에 나치 간스나 현실을 뛰는 요레스 킬링 받자 자오기네 매바 레세데 킬링거 말와 진짜 대단 자와 제사다 최탐제 간시나 랑궁원이 마주바레 다선 집에 채나 랑원이 마주바 마다 마지베스나 셴라 뛰네 셴라 뛰네 파르 샤바즈미 요바레 선배 데네기 켈린디 다 우메기 람도 기마디 켈링데 진짜 데네게 삼당에 람데 우메 람세 오래
The view of nihilism and the view of reification are extremes from the viewpoint of the middle way proponent. The middle way proponent has a view between these two extremes. They do not accept that phenomena are truly existent, and therefore they do not embrace or accept the extreme of existence or reification. Similarly, the middle way proponent does not accept that phenomena are completely non-existent, and therefore the middle way proponent does not accept the extreme of nihilism. Rather, the middle way proponent believes that when one investigates, when one seeks the phenomenon, seeks it to see if it exists in the way that it appears by way of its own essence, nothing is found. It is empty of existing in the way that it appears, but that does not mean it doesn't exist at all. Rather, it exists as a mere dependent arising, particular dependence on imputation by mind. So therefore, the middle way proponent asserts that phenomena are not truly existent, so therefore they reject the extreme of existence, because in their search they find it's empty of inherent existence. But moreover, they therefore don't say it doesn't exist at all, which would mean they would be embracing the other extreme of nihilism. They say it does exist when one doesn't search, but how so? Merely imputed by mind onto that basis. So this is how the proponent of the Madhyamaka view, the middle way view, moves between or abides between these two extremes.
지자당 저 예타자다 안에 메타세디 다디 예타세디 장신 주비게 규단께 간라에 마도 랑원이 주비 장신 주보 코로라 안에 예타세신 바 유베타세디 메타세디 자오기네 메바딜라 메타세시로와 지자다 당한 저기 랑원이 주보 예바디 까고고로 봐다 안저 롱을 봐 까고고래 지자 다디 예타디 롱을 봐 까고래 제 다 가도 갑라 안에 다 가네스 삼로 가네스 때네 가투 그래 세디 다 델야 지당네 동반이 삼다나 동반이 삼다데 동반이 도용도 란신주바 여바데 가고로 봐 동반이 또 베게 란신주바 가고레스 지상 가고래 제래 그래서 제바치네 간라에 마도 랑원이 주바디 자오기네 민두서 동상에 또이도 랑원이 주바디 가고로 봐 안다 메다데 가네삼다 가그레스디 파도 짐주시디 가네시나 차상 규단께 샤 뒤지기 최대게는 규단께라 되봐 뒤지 최만나 현실을 뛰네 가지 강라 현실을 뛰네 뛰제 뢰파 따바 좀 여바디 하고 여디 자오기네 민두 세베 요 민두 세베게 메바디 가고레스 롱을 가고레 제가 가라 하고선 현을 뛰네 두아 세베 여바디 하고도 메 자오기네 요 말에서야디 가르고레 제가 강라에 마도 랑원의 주바데 민두선의 하고여도 된 동방이 하고여도 내 강라에 마도 랑원의 주바 요래 주바디 발롱을 가고래 제가 동방이 또여도 예타데 가고 예타 세고래 예베타 랑신 주바데 세고래 롱을야 다 땡진 저와 총와 또용도 땡제기 참모데 또용도 메타데 세고래 민두 세야데 파가지 여바데 하고도 그래 제가 동방이 또 베기 아니 예타세 데네 제바지지 땡지기 또배 참아게도 메타데 세게 제가 롱을야 제가 데네기 다 우메람데 기고래 제래
To abide on the middle way path, one has to eradicate both extremes, or not fall into either extremes, not accept either extreme. So how is this done? So first, just to remind ourselves what is meant by the extreme of existence and the extreme of non-existence. The extreme of existence means that one believes that phenomena exist by way of their own essence or nature, and therefore are truly existent. The extreme of non-existence means that one believes that phenomena do not exist at all. They are completely non-existent. To hold either of these views needs to be intentional, and therefore they are acquired. So how then would an aspirant to abide in the middle of these two extremes eradicate these two extremes? And it's through the techniques that we've heard about thus far. First of all, through cultivating the wisdom realizing emptiness, one eradicates the extreme of existence. How so? When one realizes that phenomena are empty of existing by way of their own essence, when they are empty of being established in the way that they appear, one realizes that they are empty, and therefore not truly existent, and then therefore one doesn't fall into the extreme of existence. So in brief, the realization of emptiness eradicates the extreme of existence. Then the extreme of non-existence. Here, when one recognizes that whilst phenomena are empty of existing by way of their own nature, all impermanent phenomena arise in dependence on causes and conditions, as well as requiring imputation by mind, and permanent phenomena too are dependent arisings. They are dependent on imputation by mind. So therefore, it's not that phenomena do not exist at all. Despite being empty of existing by way of their own nature, they exist as dependent arisings. In brief, dependent on imputation by mind. So therefore, in this way, the proponent of the middle way view, or the holder of the middle way view, eradicates the extreme of non-existence, because they realize that whilst phenomena don't exist by way of their own essence, they are non-existent by way of their own essence, they exist as a mere imputation by mind.
다데네 제름 제가 송고를 선들이야 낭외 유다 세신 동배 메다 세스 지산 찍들라 낭외 유다 세기리에 지도 나와 세디 땡진 저와 중화 또보 또용도 메다 유다 세기리에서 대신에 제시제 가르쳐서 낭외 유다 세스 중도아 지산 나와선 땡진 저와 중화 또용도 또별로 또용도 유다 세기리에 송도아 네디지가 라서 동반이 또용도 유다 세기리에서 손로와 제가 다이네 가와 책이 되어서 다양 도고용 시기로와 데네 책고 말에 딱 돈나 디 텐주비기 투모 많이 봐 간에 송고르세네 투모 많이 봐 송다 책거래 낭외 유타세 라외도 나와 땡진 저와 중 도요도 나 랑신 주바세데 민두 선배게 삼로디 랑신 주바데 파 롱을 파 나와 까루구래라와 제가 랑신 주바세데 민두 랑신 주바 세디 랑신 덴버 주바 랑신 주바 가차데 까두구레스로 지자 띵신 저와 중에 도요도 디던다 가르랍나 대지 가서 가상 셰바나시데 지자 최근이신의 띵진 저와 중에 도요도 띵제 도별 로텔라 띵네 람사 동방이 도별로디 띵그리스 지자 랑신 주바세 요마레스 동이 도별로 젠투고레스 디제요도 지자 랑신 주바디 까고레스 지자 띵제 도백이 땡지 나외 유타세 샹야 나외 유타세 와다세도 땡지 띵신 저와 참모도 비게 로디기 아니 템버주바디 세기리에세도 유타 세기리에세도 돈다 칼로워스는 나와 띵신 저와 중화디 참모도 도용도 디기 로기 남사 최탐제 라신 주바 민도 선비게 동바레에서 동이도 불로 제용고래 제사 동이도 불리도 제용도 템버주바디 가샤데 가송로와 제가 유타 세세도 오두세다
just briefly then to repeat what I've just mentioned, the middle way proponent eliminates the extreme of existence through the realization of emptiness, because it's through realizing that phenomena are empty of true existence that one does not believe that they exist truly, which is the extreme of existence. Likewise, through realizing dependent arising, that phenomena exist, but as dependent arisings, one eradicates the extreme of non-existence, because one is not believing that phenomena do not exist at all. Rather, one understands that whilst not existing by way of their own nature, they exist as mere dependent arisings. So that's what I just said in the previous segment. So now let's turn explicitly to the text and look at the first line. Appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. So the word appearance refers to dependent arising, because what appears to us has arisen dependently. So this first line, on the surface, appears to contradict what I've just said. Because here, what I said previously, the extreme of existence is eradicated through the realization of emptiness. But what Lama Tsongkhapa has written here is that dependent arising eliminates the extreme of existence. So how are these then not contradictory? Well, what Lama Tsongkhapa has written here is a unique view of Prasangika. So to understand what I've just said and what Lama Tsongkhapa has written, how they are not contradictory, recall what we looked at in yesterday afternoon session. So when one realizes subtle dependent arising, that phenomena only exist as imputations by mind, immediately that realization induces the realization of emptiness. So in this way, the extreme of existence is eradicated by dependent arising, because when one realizes dependent arising, subtle dependent arising, immediately that consciousness induces the realization of emptiness. So this is how my two explanations sit together.
Genchen Jawa Chung Do Yong Du, and Chetam Shen, Dune Du, so Yoba the Hako Yong Du, and Chetan Yomares and Begay Tade Segres and the Sherwa. That Dele Cherum Chegar Sungrason, don't be meta says, don't buy you door the meta said to Grace of Sungrua, Chazan Dian Chibareta, Karsene, Kasan Shevanaja, Chetam Jedu, Gala Emado Rang on the tribute, don't such Resha, Gala Emado Rang on the tribute, don't Paresha, some Tomba to below the key on du. Di lamsang shugi and chede can assure Shen's doing to watch it, Chen doing to us and be danger to below the pa, General Grace. Says I danger to below the general do, Hala doing a Shen's doing you do some big door to the Le General do Mindu Sebekala, Chetam Mindu Sempigi, that some of the Garu watch. Is that the names are don't buy your door, you do, don't buy the general, Gion Lamsa. Tindia Chamoto below the Sujayong is, Chisa, Shensi Tune Yore, Saba Samjudu, Galam Casa Zao, the Yomares and begin meta the Segres, Segres, don't be meta saying, said this umbre.
Similarly with the second line, so I mentioned a couple of segments before that the middle way proponent will eradicate the extreme of non-existence through reflecting on dependent arising and recognize that phenomena are not completely non-existent. They exist merely as dependent arisings. So here in the second line, emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. So here J. Rinpoche is explicitly saying that emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. So again, this seems contradictory to what I said earlier, but we come to see that it's not contradictory but complementary when we bear in mind what we looked at yesterday afternoon, which is when the middle way proponent realizes emptiness, realizes that phenomena are empty of being established by way of their own essence, through the power of that realization of emptiness, the realization of dependent arising arises, or is realized. Dependent arising too is realized. But this is the same as in the previous line, in that through one realization, through the power of one realization, whether dependence arising in the first line or emptiness in the second line, the other realization of emptiness is induced. And that we see too in both lines, and here in the second line, through the power of the realization of emptiness, dependence arising is realized.
Session that don't buy ni said that the Jibu Chebu Tsushena says to her. Tadela don't be made a session, say Adro Sasha. That don't buy ni says 6 to her. The Ola Gudan Jibu Tsushena says to her. Jazan Digar was in a church, don't buy ni said to church, Tamje Rashin Drubigi. Now one hashing Arzoli, Rashin, but now one dashing Jibes. Rang when you do us, don't sound Dongbody Dongba door. And that's all in the Meva Rebes and Meva de Mari Gudan Jen Shanla doing it, that Gutegi, Gudan Shan, Dene, Gutegi, Namshat Pa, two Sibiki, Shanla doing it, and Gudan Jibi, Namshat Taba, the same way do. Chesa Bendigo, Shichi, some Tavana. Suk to is a Sukoron, Narzol, Nawa Nashin, Tashin Jibits, and Rang when you do but out in Bindu Rang to be Tombaresha, Sibe, Suging or Rashin, Tomba in the Doshirwa. That Sukoron Rashin to be Tomba and Sukoron, Yore Yomares and Sukoron, Yore Gudan Jen, Shala doing it, Juba Jesha, Simbigi, Gula Jenet in the Toba, so be Semadi, Jeodu, Jeza, Denigi Nisudi Yaku Sukoron Rashin to be. Rashin to be Tomba. In a Rashin to be Tomba in a Memogoba, Horon Gudan Jen Shala doing it to the body. The Niki Nisudi Yaku, Shimba Ina, so that how corner the Niki Semeting ever, the Jiga Umitawa said the Jabachito, the Niki Semeting ever in the Sema de Gigo Regere. The Sema de Legisa, Garzos and Sukso, the Sukti. Gala Madeba. Which is that? Garing Igor is Suk, the Halema, the Rang when you do Tomba Resha, and Suk Tomba in Tobe, Sema Chikirua. The name Sukora, the Meva Revel, and Rashin to be Tomba Revite, Sukoron, Meva Remed, Gudan, Shanjil, Dune Juba Resha, and Big Sukoron, Dinjan Jawachu, Toba Chichi. Chesan Suki, Tiankoron, Rashin Tomba to be Rashin Tomba. No Suki. Rashi to be Tomba in Balo Sukoron, Shanla doing to Toba, Sugi Rashin Tomba to be Loda, Sukoron, Gudan Jen Shanla, Dene to be Denting to Loni, Loni Gigo, Udilla, Tomba in the Dingin, Niga Sugi to Dustin, topic Sematic Gigo Reshe, did topic Semadi Umilam said this is.
Looking at the third line, when you understand the manner in which causes and effects arise from within emptiness. So here the meditator will have reflected repeatedly over a sustained period on emptiness and dependence arising. And now they come to generate a valid cognizer, a mind without doubt, to complete certainty, powerful realization. That all phenomena, when one investigates, we recognize that despite appearing to exist by way of their own essence, they are empty of existing by way of their own essence. But that does not mean they are non-existent, rather they are dependent on causes, or mutually dependent, or dependent on imputation by mind. For example, any object or form, something we see, something we hear, and so forth, it appears to us as being truly existent. But when we investigate, we see it is empty of true existence, but it is not non-existent, it is dependent on causes and imputation by mind. Here, one realizes with the valid cognizer that form, the object one is investigating, is both empty of inherent existence and dependence on causes and imputation by mind. So here, when one has two realizations, one inducing the other, and these are valid cognizers, and one has now come to realize the middle way path.
The Nala nga said the Donji Church nga said nga soup shana, the Church Ganesh in a detail, Jabachedo, Koranshin to be Tompas, Koranshin to be Tomba Niri said. In a Koran Meba Mare, Shenjil Dune, Yobare, says Jidu, Shenjil Dune, Yobare said she did in the Kunzu Tebatogorwa, the name Kunzu Tebatogorwa. Gala mother rang to be Tombare, said the Koron detail, Ranshin Maro, Tomba Yitu, 군주 돈한테 받아 군주 대바 시치기 때도 네가 여바데 마가와 네가 여바데 체명해 봐 니투고로 제가 디네자 디네기 또베기 다 같이 아주 데니 또베 시치기 때는 데니 덴바 네가 마가와 네가 샤투고요 봐 데네기 체명 또데 네가 샤투고레스
This applies to all phenomena, whether momentarily changing, impermanent, or not changing at all, permanent. Whether it's something, impermanent phenomenon that of form or consciousness, or a non-associated composite such as the self. Any phenomenon, despite appearing as being established by way of its own essence, is empty of being so. And therefore emptiness is realized. But it doesn't mean it's non-existent. It exists as a mere dependence arising, such as dependence on imputation by mind. And this is every phenomenon, everything we make that comes to mind, every object of thought. All phenomena, without exception, are empty of inherent existence. This way, one realizes the ultimate way the phenomena abides, but it doesn't mean they're non-existent. They exist dependently. They are dependent arisings. Now we realize the conventional way phenomena abide. In this way, the two truths, ultimate truth and conventional truth, are realized without contradiction in relation to a single object, a single basis.
디니기 체명해바니디 체명해바니바이나 안에 가리고서네 탈진 따유 초바 미규로 세디 탈진비 따와디 아줄레 기기 말했어요. 탈진바세 타세디 라신 유튜버 짐바 쳐봐. 제가 라신이 beneda nga mipa nga la mi ne nga ra shin tupa zibe zemba de phungpa la so phungpa me de phungpa ra shin tupa zibe zemba de ne ge zembi ge tawa ti chobar mi gyuro se de ne ge tawa ge je da nga ju ge chobar la de ben nga ju ge ji ge sa ji shan la ji zhuo ya ge ben nga ju lu ba shan da ji zhuo ya ge ji ge ben zhuo ya ge ji ge dang wu ru zhuo song dang wu de ge ne mi shan da ji ge chuo ne ke zhuo ba ne penny drosa de mi de drosa de le tu marwa ko dro tu marwa adi na shi da nga ju ge de ga sa da nga da phung ba chi da ra xin ju ba re san bi ge sam lo de jin ba jie ba na jin ba jie je de ne ge ke lem de ba na da yue chuo ba de de ne ge da wa jie je ne de ne sam lo de odi yo re se ke len shu chen bo chi ke len de ba na de ne ra xin ju ba ra xin ma ju ba do tu ma re 동방이 또 두고 말해. 제가 된제 참아 또 두고 말해. 디도 마도 봐나 아는 거 주게 탈바 30 캠벽고 봐. 남디 톱 두고 말해. 제가 초바 따위 초바세데 내야 아는 산유고 토발라 바시지도 산유고 봐. 조투 말해. 제가 디네자 디네게 되시셔바나 저 최담저 랑원의 주비 동바래 이내야 다 규다 제시한다 되는 주바 또베 파르파 따바전 여바래스네 디네기 덴바니기 남샤다 하고나 디네 탈징이 따와디기 파바시 지투 말에 초발 미기로서데 바시 지투 말에서다 제가 탈바다 산이고 봐 토발라 바시 지투 말에서
In the final line in the 13th verse, you will no longer be robbed by the views of grasping at extremes. So just like if one has a strong wish to go somewhere, one wants to go to a distant destination, wanting a lovely, relaxed holiday, then on your way to the airport, your ticket gets stolen. You have been robbed of your ticket and therefore robbed of the possibility of arriving at your destination. And in such a case, no matter how strong your desire is to arrive at that destination, to have that relaxing holiday, because one has been robbed of one's ticket, one cannot arrive there. Similarly, should a practitioner, through accepting a faulty philosophical tenet, accept either the extreme of existence or non-existence, through grasping at either of those extremes, they will not be able to cultivate the path that leads to liberation or enlightenment. Grasping at such an extreme is an obstacle to doing so. Whereas if one realizes the view between those two extremes, that middle way view, recognizing that all phenomena, whilst empty of inherent existence, they do exist as dependent arisings. That realization not only eradicates obstacles to achieving that final goal, leads to the attainment of the path that will lead to the attainment of that final goal.
Tonyi kor da tonyi tu pe tawa yang da pe tawa di xie sa ba de ji san de za da nga ju ge nge jun xie da lam yu zo na ma sum nge jun xie de da ane chen shu sem da yang da pe tawa sum di da nga ju ge nge jun da yang chen shu nge jun gui bi kim chen nge jun ge bi tablam nge jun ge bi che se da an di na xin chen shu sim ge gui bi kim chen de ne chen shu sim ge bi tablam chen shu sim ge bi ge jik che da 디나신 동이 또 고비 양답에 따와 고비 김체 양답에 따와 간스 또 그래신 또베 탑람 되네 양답에 또베게 따와 체 되네 양답하다 되네 텐제 참고 또바 있나 되네 산조고방 토발에 바도지 마지바 산조고방 뉴톱투 그래 세데 안다 두시네 한쪽에 대바조 시사와래.
That completes the presentation of the three principal aspects of the path. All three we've looked at in a similar way. Definite emergence, bodhicitta, and now the correct view. We've looked at in terms of why the need to cultivate them, the method for cultivating them, and the mark of having gained that realization of definite emergence, bodhicitta, and emptiness. And all three of these are indispensable for the attainment of Buddhahood. All three have to be cultivated. Now we've completed that presentation.
나데니마 가르스고라선 당한주게 남존 남숨 시에디 답에 되지 다제체부 임바데도 신자 다 가르치고래 라비 제자 남존 남숨 냠낸 제알 양아도 당보 가르치고라선 다직 제역 제림 당보 가르치고래 니바 가르치고래 타말야 가르치고래 세비게다 그 양직 돌도 지금 냠낸 제단기 다 파자완 바 대신 아주 어디 쳐야 돼 남유조 나버숨 코롱 어디지 코롱 거기 기고비 김전다 안계비 체단 계비 탑람 시에와 대신 아주 쳐야 돼 남조 남숨 뒤 거비 김체 계비 탑람 안에 가서래 타마게 디스 어디지 코롱 어디지 시에와 다 가르숨 거라서네 되는마 다 남조 남숨 뒤 당보 계와라 냠는 간에 지고 그래 당보 간에 지고 그래 바도 간에 지고 타말라 간에 지고 그래 사실 온두스네 다 고도르듯이 숨 거래.
So we've looked at all three principal aspects of the path, definite emergence, bodhicitta, and emptiness, in terms of the why it's crucial to cultivate these minds, the how to do so, the method, and then how do you know the mark or the sign of when you have successfully cultivated. So now we'll look at, in brief, how to train in these, both as beginners, whilst we have attained our path, and at the end of our training. So the beginning, middle, and end of our training.
Dedar lam yu zo nam sumgi, ne nam rashin jishin dobe tse, enpa tende, ane zunju dobge ne, tengi duma nyudo zhushi bu se do song re.
When in this way you realize precisely the essential points of the three principal aspects of the path, rely on solitude, and generating the power of joyful perseverance, quickly accomplish your final goal, my child.
Dedar lam zi zo namba sum se lam nyamlen jik rinpa namba sum di jing azo sheba na jing nye chung jiangzhu sem yang taba dawa se di ane di sheba nam sum ki ne nam jishin dobe tse se du dangbo nga zo ki gebi shinyi le dine tueba che wo re se wo re tueba che ne duene ane ma tueba ina nga zo ki duanda shingo ya ma shingtu marwa 지사 당보 퇴고 그래 퇴제 퇴섬 야고 퇴바 야고 제 디네 야고 퇴네 안디 된다들이야 아니 야네 야도 삼당 아니 삼당 고리에스 지사다 삼중세 다 퇴중제 퇴중의 시럽 퇴바제 퇴중의 시럽게 디네 퇴비 된데래 야네 야도 삼단의 삼바제네 디네 삼중의 시럽게 퇴삼중게 네남 디네마 지 땡여도 아니 라니 지신네 또베체 시도다 디 지신 네네 도베 세세도 당아제 된들 야네 야노 삼제 니기 니수이 지다와 신노 도베다 동반이 도야다 덴디기 도야 되지 도야 디르와 링에중이 삼나다 도야다 녜중 기위에 탑람 도야 안 동반이 도야 동반이 기에게 탑람 덴디 차상지 도용도 있어 도베 세세도다 삼중의 예신에 바디 세세월
When in this way you realize precisely, this then refers to come to the point where one realizes the three principal aspects of the path precisely, requires one to rely on your spiritual teacher. Because without relying on your spiritual teacher, it will be impossible to realize the three principal aspects of the path. Because without relying on one's spiritual teacher, one will not know why it is essential that we cultivate definite emergence bodhicitta and the correct view. Not knowing why it's crucial, we'll make no effort to do so. Moreover, we won't know how to cultivate the three principal aspects if we don't rely on our spiritual teacher. And without knowing the why and the how, which only comes about through relying on one's teacher, one will never attain realization of these three. Furthermore, the essential point of the three principal aspects of the path, and that is, as has been outlined previously, having given rise to the wish to gain realization of the three principal aspects, as well as knowing the method and the sign of having done so, one then can embark on the journey to realize those essential points that mark the attainment of each realization.
세대 되네실라 고래 전심 기야라 탑람 되네 삼당 고래 되네 양답에 따와 세야디 되네실라 고래 디 또비 탑람이야 땡진 저와 삼당 그래서 너도 시시제 아주 친히 제바디 퇴섬지고 퇴바지고 받아 당보 퇴고 와서 퇴고 받아 게이마 네 지게 제시에 잡시 결혼속이니 지산 결혼속이 퇴고 와 지산 퇴바지 바로와 나 지사 당하는 저기 퇴바지인데 안디네 제고래 삼백에 삼 퇴용도 안 소소랑에 삼다제 도 삼다 디나신도 신의 안에 야도 도시 삼다 디제고다 장슈샘 공부를 당보 이제 삼다 디네 제고였으면 도 진 된다디 파 삼다 야내 양도 삼당에도 디니 고 검나당 아니 검나 당보 디 삼당 이바 디네 삼당 고래 동번이 또발에 딘진 저와서 삼당 고래 도시 삼당 고랬으면 삼당하다 디네 그 검나 차상지 야고 신유도 디네 삼중을 로셔야지 디 삼다다 시고를 제가 내는 지신 또네 지신 또베세 디네기다 디니게 또아제 냠는 지다 림바도 제고를 했으면 삼는 뉴스다 하고 요도 안에 가르쳐 고라선 되는 곰자고를 해서 곰중으로 냠는 제고를 해서 뭐래 당한 저기 계승님아 두시에 나 돈다티에 삼다 되네 다 림바티게 두 삼다네 그러서 공바이나 딘지실이야 공제반은 그러서 공바이나 너 공중을 해 삼다나 샤거와
To give rise to the three principal aspects of the path, to generate them within one's continuum. First, one has to rely on one's teacher, which means hear teachings. Hear teachings, not just once or twice, but many times on the same and new topics. Moreover, whilst receiving the teachings, whilst engaged in the process of gathering knowledge, one needs to reflect on that knowledge, one needs to contemplate on that knowledge. So this is done whilst hearing teachings, and it's done in a daily meditation practice, and both in meditation, in between sessions, and this is the process of reflection. And this needs to be done repeatedly over a sustained period. Then when one has, based on deep knowledge, certainty and development in terms of one's understanding, one is then ready to engage in actual meditation on the topic. So in this way, if you're relying on a teacher and hearing, reflecting and meditating repeatedly over a sustained period, realization will come. And the preparation is extensive hearing and reflection, and then eventually one is qualified to engage in actual meditation on this topic.
Gom Japtanji, Tangbo Samdada, Niva Samdada, and then the Samda Gomgi, Rimbatiki, Shingoro, and Yamlenja Samdada, Rimbatiki, and the Shingoro, Dine, Dinzada, Turbache, and the Sambache, Dipash Chito. That Dine, that Gom Jalia, Dang, the Gomjung said, with that Gomjung Zejido, Gomya, Dinigo Gombi Kabla, and that Gomjus or Dickers Force and Delay, Embatente, Zunju Tupkines. Embatene, Zunju Tupkini, said that Chesa, Tangazo Gom Jabdicala, ne Embatene Gomgurias, mother, ne Emba Martin Baina, and the Gomlia, to sing Mongoya Bana, to sing again as Gomja, Gombala, Barsiki, Cesada, Tombani Doge, Tombanilia, Zejidu, Nyamba Shaji, and the Nyamsha, things in Zejidu, some Davalia, and the Duaki, Mongoja, Pesanga, Mongoyana, same decision to a Bashikirua. Jesa dine ne embatenje and tingures and delaya embatenje gongures the gombala ya nimichikni gomje adati gombe daya de ngesiga was relation sen ni ma khashe chanji gongsa tanga ro denje and do shen nga ya da de ya ya de pa chamjam ro do che ne adi ta ta ko le tu ma le jesa da sha sha cha jing yu gom den pa sha sha ne ani ya ge ru tu ma le jesa de Zunju Tupke, Yuma Jeba, Zunju, Pa Gashin, Joshi Gone, Pa Zunju Geje, Mutishin, and what those Congo res, Emba Dende, Zunju Tupke, Se Tupke, no Dushin, Congo, ne Empate, and Delia, Zunju Gashin, Joying, and Besu Cheja, and the Cos Gashin Joy, and the Zunju Denge, Mutu Jan to Gombia or Ezele.
To gain realization, one needs to embark on the journey of hearing, reflecting, and meditating. The preparation for meditation is to hear and reflect. So one hears the teachings from one's spiritual teacher and reflects on those teachings in the way that one is guided by one's teacher. And one, amongst many things that one needs to learn, are all the various stages of the meditation. And this is done through the gathering of knowledge and then gaining certainty in that through the reflection. When that is done, then one is ready to engage in actual meditation. So just to say as an aside here, the term meditation is usually used in a general sense and would mean both reflection and meditation. But in the context of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, there is a distinction made between reflection and meditation. So now to return to what Genla said. So when we have this solid foundation of hearing and reflecting, we then are ready to engage in meditation. Here now we come to the third line. Rely on solitude and generating the power of joyful perseverance. So here, the place to engage in actual meditation is isolated, in retreat, away from the busyness of our daily life and the busyness of society, which serves as a great distraction. So one removes oneself, isolates oneself physically and mentally from the busyness of society. Thereafter, to ensure success, one needs to strive with great vigor, repeatedly over a sustained period. If one merely does short times in an isolated place, when one is at this level, one will not attain the desired result. So therefore one needs joyous perseverance in order to have the strength of mind and commitment to achieve one's desired goal.
다 이미 가시지 검잡 되는 바 양 직도스 려야다 양 이미 가시 검잡 려야다 동반이 미비 신의 주투에게 갈래 가보 제가 지상 그런 동반이 미니 신의 주변에 델 미비 신의디 마지 바도 무티 제 전례 된데 주 지상다 신의 주 차와에는 다고 직短미유 직도 주 차로 와되네 안 려려다나 다초로 야지 엠바티는 전주 돕기네 저 균에 가서 려야 균에 매봐 아니 상님마다 봐도 검자되고 그래서 되네 진짜 말와 다 가서 아실로 소수기 미유지 동반이를 미비 신의 주변에 동반이 제지도 공부에는 동반이를 미비 신의데 마주 봐도 아니 그 전부 저기 무디 조금 대신에 줍차바이네 야직 내야 흘려져야다 야 디와 안직산다 투야다 디와 샤는 로제 판도 주야게 안되는 용서라 제가 디네자 대대 엠바 전주 돕게네 시도 소소기 미유된다디 마주 봐도지 야 신의 줍시 삼다면은 디 소소기 디네지 지긴 셈비게다 미유지여와 디 마주 봐도 그 무디 제제와야세.
In the sequence of hearing, reflecting, and meditating, one engages in meditation in an isolated place with joyous perseverance in order to take what the object, whether definite emergence, bodhicitta, or emptiness, that one has been hearing and reflecting on repeatedly over a sustained period, and develop calm, abiding, and meditative insight in relation to it. So therefore we see in this context the meaning of meditation is when one is ready, through having gained the foundation based on hearing and reflecting, to develop calm, abiding, and meditative insight on the object, definite emergence, bodhicitta, or emptiness. That is the purpose of going into an isolated place and meditating on the particular topic. When one has gained calm, abiding, and special insight on one's object of meditation, that is the point where one can leave retreat, can leave the isolated place, and once again engage with others and being of direct benefit to others. But until one accomplishes the goal of the meditation, in other words, gains realization of definite emergence or bodhicitta or the correct view, one needs to remain in retreat until one gains that realization with calm, abiding, and meditative insight.
that near the emperor chat me jata juda kira kaya medigan got kusim simchi near chile tobe near emperor chat in that dinner the emperor said same the hajig pa chik do kasore jitin chegi want to so chat ne tam nyanda yoya da so so kira cha da nyingo yoya da denige samda je same the pa anji chulo pa du se kya de ne emperor de do de same emperor chayo mare just same the bad losing mongbo by chik ta mara some the same emperor chayo ma just dine za gomya ko li go ma ne emperor de ba ne same the losing ma chana zwenga na de ba da chi ba la cha de le just dine za ga emperor se de ne de emperor ko ko le same de emperor ko ko le se ni embasidu be geju jo sangsing me de de kusim sim jikja ane sem dia rangi gewe jawa nyamne che de rang samado be tam nyanda jidin chugi odo maso waje jidin chugi tam nyanda ningu yoyage de ne samma da waje ko kure je 제가 ni embasi de le ni embada sem embasi de ni ga lo go
It's important to understand the term solitude. So we understand solitude or going into retreat, place of isolation, usually in only one of its two meanings. The outer meaning is that the environment needs to be quiet, one needs to be isolated, and thereby one can abide in solitude. So that refers to the outer environment and is important. But there is a second meaning, which is of even greater importance. And that is, so that's outer isolation, and then there's inner isolation. And inner isolation means free of mental distraction. It doesn't necessarily mean completely free of mental distraction, but it means free of distraction to ordinary worldly affairs or ordinary worldly attitudes. Because one may remove oneself from society and live somewhere isolated, but one's mind may well be back on the affairs of society. For example, what are people saying about me? What all the things I will do after I've spent time in retreat and I have this reputation. So if one is in an isolated place and has attained a place of outer isolation, but not inner isolation, it is one has no hope of attaining freedom from the prison of samsara. One is now just in a audibly quieter prison. That is all. So therefore it's imperative that in dependence on one's training in hearing and reflection, one has developed sufficient meditative skill to not be distracted by worldly affairs.
That's Tengi Duma Nudu Tushik Po, said Tengi Duma Nudu Tushik Po, Tengi Duma said Anzuke, Tengi Dea Toyake, Tablam Lam Yamne, Tengi Dewa, Tarbata Tamjiki Masanjoko Toya. That Duma Lana, the Mudi Sigura, that's also Tengi, the Guan Kunsi, Yunden Quinte, that Tartu Yunden, and the Topcha Tartu Sanjoko Party. Di tobe tondala tobe chirdo jeji jeja zunju dobgene nyurdu chushi usede anda jema diwa ji lo jema ji dadenga lega charminu di membaje ko lamsa nyurdu lamsa ane ko su di nyamlen jele bezun jeshos chushi denege tobne lamsa denege nyamlen je denege 은 교보 균을 뭐 마서 교보상 이거 토해야 탑는 베지 제쇼세 든지 땡기 두만이도 루시 부세데 부세데 베네 파메 네 부세데 베 제위게 치리에서다 제자디 내가 제자 지기래 되는 부세디 나 제름 지게 다들 남존 송상 오소 송사디 고랑게 로마 차오 나와다 봐야지 채를 어딜이야 아니 오소 송바래 제자 땡기 두만이 루시 부스 결혼 된데 제아선 오소 송바래 이제 다 되한라 디 나서 나도 차상을 송여래서 가서 먼저 차상을 두스제는 냠는 제고를 해서지 먼저 송발해 해줘.
Rely on solitude and generating the power of joyful perseverance, quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. So here, Rinpoche is encouraging us to reflect well, to hear many teachings, reflect well on them, and when that foundation is properly established, then to go into an isolated place, and with great vigor, with joyous perseverance, strive to achieve our final goal, and to do so with a mind that is both relaxed, but not overcome at all by laziness. With a relaxed mind, but not overcome by laziness, and thereby with a determination to quickly accomplish one's final goal, one will not be overcome by laziness. But this is the advice J. Rinpoche is giving us. And when he composed this text, he composed it for his direct students. And we can see this expression of closeness in the final line. Quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. So whilst we haven't met J. Rinpoche directly, having received these and many other teachings, we can be included amongst his objects of love and his direct students.
야보 중월에 디네 자당 저된 마지 가서 결혼해서 당가라당 차상 찍바래 제상 가서 차상디 아니 내중다 안 되지 그 신이 셰바 나신 장서 내중 되게 뭐 삼다야다 아니 장주 셈 삼다야 아니 다 동요도 배다와 삼다 될이야 아니 가서 또 셰바 제지 된제다 도시네 문도 삼다도 전에 삼다디 가서지 야네 양도 도시는 삼다야디 다 예치 못 차고래 다 돌드는 아주 뒤치네 제가 대함 샘자 탐지기도 자주 샘요군이야 샘자나 산요고버 투비치도 이 대자다 양답에 따와 또제 아니 발전주기 냠에 제제 묘원유와 산지기다데 제름치 띵기 뉴마뉴도 주시부세 제름치 묘원유 교고도 쓰는 냠는 제쇼 교고 산요고번 토토버 제쇼 송와 나신 나랑이 아니 도시네 강연지에 되네 안 도시네 냠는 지기 교고 산요고번 토토버 지기 다 교고 산요기디 산요고번 예를 토버이네 시헬이야 판도 개침부 줍투에게 신 동아세야 대기 주야데 아니 교가지 두구리 선배게 도시네 가지고 삼다제 당한저 도시네 냠는 지야 책으로 와
All of you have chosen to use this time in your home to reflect on these three principal aspects of the path. Now, amongst you, there'll be varying degrees of physical isolation, but whatever your circumstances are, you have made the decision to hear these teachings and to reflect on them, and this is something to generate great joy in. And all of us, myself included, need to reflect on definite emergence, bodhicitta, and emptiness. And in order for any of us to actually give rise to these realizations in our mind, to transform our way of thinking, these meditations need to be engaged in repeatedly over a sustained period. So my hope is that the experience you've gained through doing meditation in this retreat, you keep up this practice, you keep up this habit, and continue in a daily practice. Because in this way, through reflecting on definite emergence, bodhicitta, and emptiness, repeatedly over a sustained period, so that, and eventually not just in meditation, but between one sessions too, inner transformation will come. Inner transformation will come. We see from how the text has been concluded here that we should take this text as personal instruction by Lama Tsongkhapa to ourselves. At the start of each session, turn to him, feel his presence before you, and request his inspiration or his blessing that we quickly accomplish the temporary goals, or the intermediate goals of realizing definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view, and thereby quickly the final goal of enlightenment.
대사 추제 자라단 자야기 tun에 퉁게 야고 여반자 먼저 자야 tun에 시행 아주야 간실량 아주기 고바디 먼저 죽투월에 두고월에 저던다 죽투월 되네 대자 나라이네 되니기 시규라바디 배마세 거우셔라 중서 가와상 보이스무도 되네장 아주 차상기 다경 아주 차상기 된디기 진인 제비기 아주 쇠남 개침버 사요 제자 당아주 쇠남디야 모아르지 개와치 모야지 차고래
due to the marvels of our modern society, despite being physically distant, we really have been closely connected for this period. And moreover, you have provided me with an opportunity to reflect and comment on this text, and you yourselves have had an opportunity to hear and reflect on this text, and thereby, in dependence on each other, we have all accumulated vast stores of merit over these days together.
ane zemli nalia an neyamda kinye shiwada an zemli nalia ngajele neyamda an dimebege da ji pansun chupa jaya da denigi thone kanga mongbu je chasa da kanga di shije zemli chasa ne shidi yo sho sedi ngajo kewa dela dene zemli le neyam shiwa machuk chiwa shine zemli chasa an mi chasa de shidi yo sho sedi ngajo dushine malam jaya jikche ane jene ngajo Gewa Sachabadi, Marazu Gewa Tilatine, Marazuki, Jikshanshu Jamniche, Yamlin Jia, Donyu to be shared in Yamlin Jeje, and Goju was Sanji go top to your shores, Malam Jaya Jikse. Then she Helia, and she Shengi Dungasia, and Digi to be like Kidine, Shenia, and the Pember troop to Yagi, the Niki troop to Yagi, Guru Shore said, all those in the Malam Jaya and record down.
Now when you come to dedicate, I request that whilst you're reciting words of dedication, you also, in addition to that, the meaning of the words, hold in mind that may all sentient beings quickly attain freedom from all problems, suffering and difficulties, both those that are intense as well as those that are slight, whether they come from external sources such as the ongoing pandemic and other forms of illness, or whether they come from internal sources, such as their own mental challenges, conflict arising in their mind, or conflict between peoples, whether between nations or groups of people or individuals. May all of this be overcome. May no more causes be accumulated. May all accumulated causes be eradicated. And furthermore, to bring this about, may ourselves and all sentient beings without exception quickly realize definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the correct view. And lastly, may all the virtuous aspirations of the holy beings, as well as of all of the world, may all these virtuous aspirations and activities be quickly accomplished in accordance with the Dharma. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.